I trust that it's there, and I trust that it's an option available to us, but is there any way that we can?
Yeah, I mean, also, I step a half step back and refer kind of that one to to the people that represent.
I'm sorry, Mike Tibbs with Miller Hall and Triggs is in the audience, and he's representing the village in our negotiations and with the development agreement, and I guess I'd defer to him, but I know there's a ways to go before we get to, if we have to rate ourselves, if we issue a bond, what kind of payments we're going to have, those types of things. But I would imagine we could have some sort of a rough schedule put together, assuming the interest rates you've already provided, and kind of see where we're at. I would think that'd be.
I would just say, for example, the interest rates that I provided in one of the charts, that same bank president told me I might be as high as an interest point high each of the first 5 years. So I'm a developer, but I do want to say the numbers I gave you, if we're on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 is I'm very aggressive, and 1's being I'm ridiculously conservative, I think I'm a 7. I mean, I will point out to you many examples where I'm being cautiously conservative. I mean, for example, I don't project every commercial space generating retail sales tax, because the reality of it is, you never see every commercial space generate retail sales tax. I don't have the retail sales tax being ridiculously high, on any individual space. I have them being historical numbers that are very defensible. What we project from new population growth and the revenues coming from those come straight from Department of Revenue numbers. I mean, straight. I mean, I spent time with your audit for the last 4 years and calculating numbers. I asked Mr. Fick to give me his numbers, and then I used his numbers instead of mine, because he got his from independent sources. So we tried, we're not here trying to cook the books, so to speak, and create a picture.
If I can follow up with one more question. In terms of a timeline, as of tonight, this is the first opportunity that the Heights public has had to sort of digest this information, right? Previous meetings have all been in executive session. In terms of going forward, you said your timeline is to vote on an agreement next week. Is that correct? Or is that what we're...
That's what we would like to see. I mean, our time frame can't change. I'll be honest, if we don't give them notice, then we either have to buy a building not knowing what we're going to do with it, which ownership's not comfortable of doing, or we have to know that we have an agreement so we can move forward.
A question, I guess not to you, but a general statement to my trustees. I don't know if we've really spent the time with this information and with the public. I don't know if a week gives us enough time to do that. I think maybe we should, going forward, go forward a little bit more slowly, more cautiously, and deliberate this a little bit more. This bond represents twice our annual budget, and I think that we should actually have a discussion with the people of the Heights before we vote on it.
That I understand that, but for all intent and purpose, this plan has been on the table for 4 years. And we finally have somebody who's willing to step up. Bear in mind, too, we're not asking to raise taxes. Bear in mind that when you talk TIF money, it's not public money. TIF money, that's who pays for the TIF. So in essence, what he's doing is the developer will get the benefits of an upfront loan from the village that is being guaranteed by in this case, over the life of the bond payments, virtually guaranteed by the increase in the real estate taxes. That's what pays for it. The money that the developers put into the TIF is what we will be paying the majority of the loan through over the course of those loans. So it isn't like we're saying, okay, we got to raise $8.6 million from the village and everyone's going to be paying another $500 a year. No. The TIF was put in place for this thing, and what it actually is being paid for is by the developers. Now, part of that is based upon, we will see money increases from the state and the federals for population increase, and it's a sizable amount. We don't have it, down to a penny or anything, but it's a sizable amount, thousands upon thousands of dollars. Also, we'll have no doubt with an increase in population, there will be some carryover to buy additional things within the village. The most important thing that concerns me is that if it's left empty, probably this is our last chance for anything positive to come out of that. And I believe that because there is open land around there, the spillover effect from this development makes it worth whatever risk there is. But again, the majority of the risk is on the shoulders of the developers.
That may be true, but any shortfall in sales tax revenue, the village will be left holding the bill. We'll have to pay for that somehow.
You know what, and Trustee Full, I understand your trepidation about that, and I understand your concern. The thing is, if it was a Cub Food type venture where it was all based upon increase of sales tax revenue, I would be in complete agreement with you. But the vast majority of this is based in the TIF, and that's why the TIF was created.
Is there any reason that we wouldn't get sort of an independent analysis of the numbers, or some sort of consultant to actually look at that and say, you know, what is our risk? What is the potential that we'll have to pay for that?
That's what Mr. Tibbs is doing, and will be doing. There isn't a lot of retail space there. There's some, but it isn't like we're building a mall
I'm saying we have.
where it has to be 50% filled to make the payments.
I'm just saying that we have one set of numbers, the developers. We have nobody.
Again, it's based upon what the retail we already have in place in Peoria Heights has brought in.
Okay, I'm just saying maybe it would be beneficial to have sort of an independent analysis of the
Mr.
numbers.
Tibbs will be doing the analysis.
Okay.
And once he
I
gets the
didn't-
analysis done, that's when he'll share it with us, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And we're going to do that within a week. Five business days.
The beauty of it is you can vote no.
Okay?
But in
I'm sorry.
terms of.
I would just
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
Mayor and trustees, if I could, because this is, substantially property tax, we valued our property tax, our individual units, our individual apartments at $85,000 a unit. And to come up with our property tax projections, we took $85,000 divided by 3, because assessed valuation is a third, divided by 100, because it's per $100 of assessed valuation, and then multiplied it by your current tax rate. And that's one of the numbers that you see in the spreadsheets that we provided. On the commercial space, we either used $125 a square foot as the value of the commercial space, or $115 a square foot, depending upon which space, because an inward space isn't as valuable as an outward space, so we varied. I would encourage you to look at any of the competing apartment complexes in the Peoria market that are of this quality. I think you'll find our $85,000 is right in the ballgame. The retail, again, it's going to cost us more than $125 to build it. It's costing us more than $85,000 to build an apartment. But we made some, I think, pretty good assumptions. But I do encourage anybody, and Mr. Tibbs certainly can validate that. Your township assessor, can probably validate those things. I mean, those weren't numbers. I mean, by sending you the Excel spreadsheets, the intent was you can look right in and see our formulas. I mean, don't take our word for it. Look right in and see the numbers.
We've basically had this thing going since '09. We've had a big meeting up here, and there was a lot of people here when Tincture, is that his name, was originally doing this, and everybody was for it. So we haven't really hidden this from view. It's just that we finally got some real investors who know what they're doing to go on with this project. It's still basically the same project that we had in '09. And I don't see us waiting any longer. We need to get this going so we don't miss out.
I'd like to make a couple comments, if I might, please. I want to thank Mr. Fuller. This is one of the healthier debates I think that we have had, and it's a very important issue, and I think you raised some good points, and so I appreciate, as a taxpayer, you asking the important questions in a public forum. I think that regardless of the outcome, just from a process standpoint, that this was a good process to have, so I appreciate that. I have a question for Matt in terms of bonding. Can you give us a little history? This isn't the first time that the village will have issued bonds, is that correct?
Well, I have not been involved in any bond issues since
Okay.
I've been here, so I don't know, maybe Bob, if we bonded for public works projects in the past, but I don't
Okay.
think, I don't even know if we have a rating, to be honest with you. I mean, it's been so long since we've done a
Okay.
bond
I
that we'd
couldn't
have to go out and
recall.
get rated.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand some of the hesitancy because it is, whether it's the first time we've bonded in a very long time or not, it's a significant bond issuance and it's important. So I think it's good to be talking about it. I think we have been talking about it, just maybe not necessarily in this type of forum because at that point it was not appropriate to do so yet. I appreciate Mr. Gablehausen's interest in the property. I think it says a lot about the Heights and the environment that the board and the mayor has created in the Heights to have a development of this potential and this potential size and this potential impact, and to have the leaders in the community come into the Heights and say, look, we think this is important. So I think that is very encouraging for us, and I commend you and I thank you for your leadership in that role. I know we keep talking about the RFP in 2009 and so on and so forth. Speaking as someone who lives in that neighborhood, as I know Trustee Carter does as well, and I'm not speaking for her as my neighbor, but I appreciate the fact that the village is having this type of discussion to reinvest in that neighborhood. I think that's very important. As you'll recall, a number of years ago, I served as the chair of the Peoria Heights Neighborhood Impact Partnership, which is created through a grant opportunity through the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission. We had representatives from all the local government bodies here within the Heights boundaries, and we did some strategic planning, and that's a strategic plan that both the village board and the school district and the school board, all adopted and said they wanted to be a part of. And this development ties into numerous factors spread throughout that document. It talks about reinvesting in our neighborhoods. We had in that document, and if I can back up for a moment, part of that document was done through a very extensive community survey that we did to all the residents, and they said, we want you, as our elected officials, to reinvest in our neighborhoods, to create a community center, which I believe this project also potentially could have a community center in its current state. It talked about growing our tax base, which, as you know, with our current boundaries, is something that we have an extremely limited ability to do that at this point in time. And this is an opportunity to not only reinvest in that neighborhood, but to take a current property that, while I recognize is not sitting vacant, is not being used to its full potential. And, you know, the residents also said that we want you to make these items a priority. You guys started down that path when you created the TIF. You started down that path when you did your strategic plan. And I realize that, you know, it's now 2013, and it does take some time, especially with government. But you have the opportunity to step up and do what you said you were going to do 4 years ago. And so I would just encourage you. I realize that it's a lot of money, but I also think that as somebody who lives in that neighborhood, there's a very big risk if you don't do this. And so while I appreciate all the questions about the finances, and I think that that's very, very important, and I think that we all need to have a comfort level with that, and I realize you're also on a very tight time frame, so I respect that as well. But I think at this point, to do nothing sends a very negative message to the taxpayers when you said, tell us what you want, and then you work towards it and you didn't do it. And it also has a very significant, it just says a lot. So I just want to leave it at that. So I appreciate you letting me have my say.
Well said, Shauna. And I think one of the things that we also need to keep in mind is that if we do approve this project and it moves forward and we secure a bond for the $8.5 million, we're just not giving that to the developers. We're making an investment in the project. We're making an investment in the future of the village and making an investment into the longevity of the village as a municipality. Our return of investment comes from increased sales tax, increased property taxes, increased population, and not just sales tax revenue from the new development itself, but as Jeff alluded to earlier, it's going to increase foot traffic in the village. It's going to bring people into our existing businesses as well as the new businesses. It helps us develop the trail and the trailhead building that we still have that grant sitting out there that we need to do something with or lose it. I just, you know what, yes, there is some risk involved, but I think the upside and the potential for this development is too great for us to walk away from as a municipality.
Trustee Cumming, I agree with most everything you say. I just have a question for you and anybody else on the council. Do you think we should figure out how to pay for it before we vote for it? I mean, it seems to me that no matter what the most optimistic of scenarios are, we're going to be on the hook for some money. No matter what, there are going to be some years up front in the first 5 years where the property taxes and sales taxes are going to be less than our debt service obligation. I know that you're saying that we can sort of work with the bank and sort of change that and make our debt service payments lower in the beginning and backload them a little bit. But until we have those numbers in front of us, it seems sort of foolish to vote for something that we don't know how we're going to pay for yet. Until we can see those numbers and say, okay, this is how we can change our debt, our bond obligation, and these are the projections for sales tax and property taxes. We're just sort of agreeing to something because we like the idea of it, instead of agreeing to something that we have the numbers in front of us.
How you pay for it, Trustee Fuller, is that first of all, you have to wait for the tax to kick in for when they finally do the build-out. So you got to wait for the build-out.
Yeah.
Then you have to wait for the taxes to kick in. So out of that 8.5 million is included the first couple years' payments on the bond. So in essence, we're borrowing money to pay for what we're borrowing for. After that, Trustee Fick has already brought, and I think Jeff has agreed to it, to keep $1 million of that 8.5 in sort of an escrow for us to be able to pay towards those payments if, for whatever reason, the sales tax doesn't take off immediately like that. So if you get through that first 4 to 5 years, then all of a sudden now you've got where the building is completely built out. Hopefully something's been built across the street. So that's when, that time frame for about the final 10 to 11 years of the bond payments will be coming from the TIF funds, which about 80% of it will be from the increased real estate taxes.
So if I can repeat what you said that, because I didn't understand this point, that we keep the first 2 years of the debt service obligation back from the 8.5 million in addition to the other million that we're
We
keeping
pay
back?
our first 2 years of the bond payments from the money we borrowed because of
Okay.
the money from the increased real estate taxes will not kick in within that 2-year period.
Right, so that's in addition to the million that we're going to hold back?
Yes.
So,
You have two, what Matt suggested and we agreed to was the bond issue always had between 2 and 3 years of capitalized interest.
right.
Okay, in addition to that, Matt requested that we consent to another $1 million being held out of the bond and not being released to us until a certain level of retail is open,
And that's, what level is that?
15,000 square feet.
So 15,000 square feet has to be technically open, but there's no guarantee that we would be getting any revenue from that.
Would they have to be open before the last million gets released?
Well, open, it's not a revenue stream, it's just an open retailer, right? I mean,
Well,
there's
you
no-
typically
there's no
wouldn't-
There's no guarantee.
Well, retail sales from the Department of Revenue have about a 60 to 75-day turnaround.
Well,
So,
Okay, my understanding is the benchmark is not a certain set level of revenue. The benchmark is whether or not retail space is open?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So,
Well, and Trustee Fuller, to answer your earlier question, I guess I would answer that with another question. If not for projections, what other numbers do we have to work with?
I'm saying that we don't have projections right now.
Well, we
I
do
would
have
like to-
projections.
I think we do have projections,
But
but, you know,
we've got
I
plenty
just
of
don't
them.
think that they're,
Got plenty of projections.
that they're
One set of
what you're wanting to
projections.
see.
Yeah, and we'll have another set.
I didn't understand that it was the attorney's obligation to provide a set.
He will give a review of the projections, and you will make changes if necessary. Am I correct?
I will certainly work with the village and the developer to help structure the bond issue in a way that minimizes, to the extent possible, the risk associated with the revenue shortfall. So yes, we will be, certainly, it's my goal to try to work with the village and developer to make sure that you don't get into a position where there are large annual payments of debt service that you have no source of revenue for. I've done it. In fact, I just emailed this afternoon a draft of the development agreement to the mayor and Matt Fick. And so we're trying to get that in position. And I know that Jeff hasn't seen it at this point in time. As I listen to the conversation, there's some of the things in the agreement that I think will need to be tweaked in terms of your current projections regarding the timing of the retail development and so forth. We do have a draft of an agreement that is designed to try to minimize to the extent possible risk of the village. There's always risk in a project like this. I mean, there's no way I can guarantee that I or anybody else can guarantee to you that there's this is will go exactly as planned. But if the project is built, it certainly will generate incremental property tax revenue. There's no way around that. It's going to be, if the project is built, it's going to be taxed. And to the extent that it's taxed, you get all of the real estate tax revenue generated, not only sharing amongst with the other taxing districts as a result of the fact that the property's in the TIF district. So, I mean, what we're talking about here probably is more in the range of, perhaps at the outside, you don't quite make what you would hope. I mean, you're still going to get a significant revenue stream under any circumstance. But there's, again, I can't guarantee that it will always be 100%, but you're going to get a significant portion of it. And that's the question that the village board has to weigh, is what are the risks associated with not proceeding? What will happen to the property if something like this doesn't go forward? And that's the, you have to weigh those risks. That's a decision the board has to make. I can't make that decision. But there's risk associated with this. And you just have to balance the benefits going forward against the potential negative consequences of not.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple, is that, yeah, if the retail doesn't take off reasonably well, it could cause financial issues for the village. There's no question about that. Even those of us who have no trouble with a one-week time frame, we understand the risk involved in that. But we balance that with the risk of it staying empty, with the risk of what little open land we have not being used in the next 10 to 15 years. We'll come to a point where Peoria Heights, if this is not done, we were seeing movement over on War Memorial, which is great. We'll never see movement down on Route 29 because we have IDOT involved. This is one of the few spots we have where the opportunity for additional retail and to add population. It's one of the few opportunities we have. And this much I can tell you is that and I told Administrator Fick this a long time ago, if these things are not done in the next 5, 10, 15 years, there won't be a Peoria Heights because the cost to provide services is not keeping up with our revenues. So what you'll end up doing is saying, okay, we can stay Peoria Heights, but we won't have our own police department. We can stay Peoria Heights, but we can't buy new equipment for the fire department. We can stay Peoria Heights, but we'll have to farm out our street department to Peoria County. So at what point do you say, well, what's the use of being Peoria Heights? You know? So what it is that there is risk involved, possibly great risk, but at least the short-term great risk is covered by the money that we're borrowing to make those first two payments. It's part of that $8.5 million to make our first couple payments on the bond issues. Gives it time for that building to be built out and start getting the tax revenue off of because that building right now is assessed at about $1 million of value.
Yeah, it generates $33,000 a year.
Okay.
In taxes.
Now, Jeff, I'm guessing as a layman, I'm looking at that building. If you have 124 apartments in it, particularly if they're upper type, payout type apartments, plus you have good retail there, you're taking a building that will probably decline in value, and you're creating a property that will almost certainly increase in value. It's like anything else. If it's going to be valued at, what were you thinking about, 18, 20 million?
Yeah, for the market value when we're all said and done. 85,000 a unit is just how I build it in my head.
Hopefully we'll see a turnaround over the next 15 to 20 years where property will do what it historically did, except for the past 4 or 5 years, where your $100,000 house will be worth $130,000, in 10, 15 years, and our $20 million building will now be worth $25 million. And while that TIF is still going on, any increase in taxes from, let's say it's 20 to 25 million, any increase in taxes, real estate taxes, will go into the TIF fund. So the TIF fund could actually continue to grow. Village boards in the future may have to decide to extend that TIF fund out a few more years, another 5 years, whatever it is, to continue to draw on that. But I think everyone on the board understands there is risk involved, and there's risk involved with not doing it. So what the board has to decide is, in that balance, which one do I feel, which way do I need to vote? And that's,
So there's no option in terms of, say, some people on the board are for the project, just don't feel comfortable making a decision with the information they have available, and would like a little bit more information to be made available so that they can make a better vote.
Trustee Fuller, I'm kind of at a loss. How many experts do you want here? No, we already know the increase of the value of that property, we know is going to happen.
Yeah.
And over the life of that loan, if that's going to pay for close to between 60 to 80% of the payments on that, you get to a point where how much, has been plenty of time over the past few months where I know you've done your own information gathering.
Yeah.
Okay? You've gathered information on your own. I have as well. We have a developer and we have an attorney representing us. Now, we can continue, trying to grasp at more information from more experts, but this gentleman's under a time frame. So what you have to decide, and I'm saying this as a friend and as mayor to the trustee, is that this will be your decision.
Yeah.
Okay? The rest of the board will have to make their decision. If it comes to me as a tie vote, I'll make my decision. But just because a board member or the mayor decide that the risk of it staying empty outweighs the risk of having this done the way that Jeff has described, doesn't mean they're not concerned, doesn't mean they haven't done due diligence in looking at the numbers up to this point. It's just that they know that nothing's ever 100%, particularly a project like this.
And you don't feel uncomfortable with a one-week timeline?
No, because this has been discussed for 4 years now. The dollar figures are there.
But can I mention something? The $8.5 million figure was first mentioned by myself when I brought it up. We weren't even planning on talking about that.
No, he
figure
brought,
Yeah, when, if I could, Trustee Fuller, we met, I believe it was 3 weeks ago
Yeah.
today. I provided, and Trustee Cummins was there, I provided a narrative, I provided all my, all the spreadsheets, all the background, all the data. I believe that was then distributed to all the trustees. I mean, that information hasn't changed. I mean, we continue to obviously work on the project every day, but